Hey everybody, welcome to Go Bold. My name is Jody Atariwala and I'm your host. And I'm coming to you from Y-Jetty at Canadian Forces Base Esquimalt in British Columbia. And for this episode, we are going to be focused on the Kingston-class maritime coastal defense vessels, which you see right behind me. There are 6 of these ships in the Royal Canadian Navy's Pacific Fleet, and they are multi-mission vessels. They carry out many roles, including training, force projection, boarding parties. They will deploy modular payloads to enable them to carry out a whole host of missions. So welcome to this episode of Go Bold, and I hope you enjoy our tour of the maritime coastal defense vessels. So, hey everybody, welcome. We are on board HMCS Yellowknife, one of Canada's Kingston-class maritime coastal defense vessels. And I'm joined by Lieutenant Commander Tyson Babcock. And Lieutenant Commander Babcock is the commanding officer of HMCS Yellowknife. Commander, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on board.
Thank you, sir. So tell me a little bit about your motivation to serve in the Navy.
So I grew up in the interior in Kamloops, and I had a couple of family members that were in the military ahead of me. So my grandfather did a full career as a radar operator, and then my other grandfather on my dad's side served in World War II as an artilleryman. So I had a history of service in my family, and in high school I think I'd watched Top Gun or something, and at the time the strong, proud, today's Canadian Forces ads were running at every movie, I think. So it was definitely something that I felt a calling to service particularly. And I joined the cadets and found out about the Royal Military College and decided that it would be a good opportunity to get an education, become an officer, and also give back and serve my country. So I went through the application process asking to be everything Air Force and got offered a career as a naval officer, as a maritime surface and subsurface officer is what we called it back then, now naval warfare officer. And kind of did some research and had to look and see what it was all about because I knew nothing about the Navy at the time, and ultimately decided that it would be a good opportunity to serve either way, and jumped in and attended the Royal Military College and then came out to the coast and have been here ever since. So the Navy's provided me a lot of great opportunities, and I have a family now of 4 children and my wife that I support, and they support me as I go to sea and I adventure around the world with the Navy.
Yeah, it's awesome. And these particular ships, the Kingston-class, are very versatile warships. They're commissioned ships in the Royal Canadian Navy. Tell me about their role and their function in the Navy.
So the role has kind of changed on this coast anyways over the years. So primarily they were built and constructed for coastal defense and particularly mine countermeasures. On the East Coast, they still do a mine countermeasures mission in support of NATO in Northern Europe. But on this coast, we've kind of shifted. We were mine countermeasures focused, and we still are. Like technically, Yellowknife is normal readiness, mine countermeasures, so we do have a mission still to be swept up on mine countermeasures, but the focus has shifted more in the past 10 to 15 years to support to narcotics operations in the Eastern Pacific and the Caribbean in support of Jayat South, which is a U.S. Coast Guard-led operation.
Okay.
And now as well, we've just sailed in the past couple of years in support of force generation for the coast, so generating naval warfare officers, maritime technicians, as well as bosuns at sea. So we do kind of a mix of all of that, and then we layer on top of that interoperability with the U.S. Coast Guard, U.S. Navy, our own Coast Guard, and some outreach activities along the coast of BC.
Right, which makes these ships super versatile because you have these roles, as you mentioned, the primary, I guess, role that they were built for, mine countermeasures, continue to do that. But as we tour this ship, one of the parts of it that really stand out to me is the sweep deck, because that allows for modular I guess, missionization of this ship. Tell me a little bit about that.
So we have two, I guess, hard points on the sweep deck, which is at the back of the ship, if you've never toured a Kingston-class before, where we can secure sea containers. And that allows us to bring a modular mission set. So right now, I'm sure you saw the accommodations pod. So primarily we use that to bolster our numbers and have 47 people on board for training. Mm-hmm. We can also add another sea container at the back, which has whatever mission set that we're doing. So in years past, we've brought on bottom object inspection vehicles, side scan sonar, even had a container for a U.S. law enforcement detachment where they can work out of. Other things that we've done is UAS operations, so launching and recovering small UASs, which is kind of a building mission set that we're working on and kind of paving the way that for different vehicles that will be used on board like Arctic offshore patrol vessels or even the frigates in the future.
Right.
Another one too is bringing on a mine countermeasures team that put a underwater vehicle in the water to go look for mines, and we're going to be doing that at the end of this month as part of the task group exercise.
That's awesome. So yeah, it makes it very much a multi-mission ship. This is a warship. I would be remiss if I didn't ask about weapons and that kind of capability. Mm-hmm. Originally, when they were built, they did have a larger caliber weapon, but that's since been removed. And I guess part of that is obsolescence, but it's also perhaps just an evolution of the role.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to sail on Saskatoon in 2012, and at the time we still had the 40 millimeter on the forecastle, and it was very interesting to see because it was something straight out of World War II almost, where
Sure.
You had an operator sit on a mounted turret that would turn under a motor and fire using a big crosshairs. So it wasn't the most accurate thing. It definitely was a bit impressive to see because it made a big boom, but ultimately based on the role of this class, we don't need something of that size. So now we have two 50 cals, which are just out on the gun deck here behind us. And that is our primary surface force protection weapon.
Right. And now just tell me a little bit about the crew. How many people on board these ships, and how many more can you accommodate with some of those modular pods?
So we can sail with 47, including the accommodations pod, and every ship now sails with an accommodations pod. That's just part of how we sail now.
Okay.
47 includes myself having a cabin mate, so generally we sail with 46, but that can be any breakdown of, MARTEC trainees, MARTECs, bosuns, different operators, naval communicators, naval warfare officers, and then a couple of cooks. So that's our primary kind of crewing construct, and then we can kind of mix and match to support whatever mission we're going out to achieve.
Okay, and I guess the final question I have for you is the endurance. How long can you be out at sea? If you're deployed on a mission.
The biggest limiting factor for us is rations. So our fridges and freezers aren't that large, so we're pretty well limited to 2 weeks continuous sailing because of our rations. That being said, our fuel economy is quite good with our diesel electric propulsion, so we can go quite a while without fueling at an economical speed. Mm-hmm. I guess the biggest limitation for us is the construct of the way the hull is built. So it's a flat bottom, almost flat bottom ship. So in sea state, it doesn't do so well. I know the East Coast has crossed the Atlantic, and I've never done it in a Kingston class, and I give them props for doing it because it's probably not very comfortable. We go out to the west coast of Vancouver Island, and that's pretty well as far as we go. We go down the Oregon coast into California as well, and then, as I said before, the Eastern Pacific all the way down to about the equator.
Right.
But we try and stick kind of close to land so that we don't get the big swell and sea state. Allegedly, there was a Kingston-class that before my time sailed all the way to Hawaii and back, but from what I heard, it was such a rough trip that they decided to never do it again. So,
Right.
yeah, we stick pretty close to Vancouver Island. We were just up in Alaska during our last sail, and we'll go as far as into the Northwest Passage. We've had a couple of MCDVs go that far north during the summer, and then as far down, as I said, to the equator. So,
Well, Lieutenant Commander Babcock, thank you so much for sharing, your perspective on service and the role of the Kingston-class. I'm totally looking forward to having a tour of the ship and getting a sense of its spaces. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So, hey everybody, here we are on board one of Canada's Kingston-class maritime coastal defense vessels, and I'm joined with Lieutenant Newcomb, who is the engineering officer aboard.
I am.
Lieutenant Newcomb, thank you so much for joining me on Go Bold. It's great to have you on the show.
It's awesome to be here.
Hey, thank you. So tell me a little bit about serving on board the Kingston-class. What exactly is your role and function aboard?
So it's a little different than everything I've done before. All my previous sailing had been on the frigates, the Halifax class. I came down here this past summer, so I've been here about 8 months now, and I'm the engineering officer. So on board we have a couple different departments. One of the bigger departments is the MSC department. So we deal with all the mechanical stuff on board, from hotel services, so like power generation, freshwater, black water, gray water, to steering, propulsion, and basically making the ship move and float is kind of the purpose of our department.
Awesome. And so for engineering to make it move and float, like these ships have kind of a unique propulsion system compared to a lot of the other ships. In our previous episode, we focused on the Orca class. These ships, the maritime coastal defense vessels, the Kingston-class, are much larger than the Orca class, but they maneuver in a different way.
Yeah, so these ships are extremely maneuverable, which is pretty cool. Like they're just as maneuverable essentially as a tug. So we have 4 diesel alternators on board that generate our power, and then that electricity is transferred through our motors into rotational energy. And at the aft end of the ship, we have 2 what we call Z-drive motors that can point and turn in any direction to provide thrust. So we're extremely maneuverable. We don't have a rudder. We just have 2 of these props that can turn 360 degrees to maneuver us however we need to. So when we're coming alongside here at Wide Jetty, we don't actually even need a tug. We can come along on our own, whereas the frigates would typically have 1 or 2 tugs that would assist them.
Right, that makes it super cool. So it'd be kind of fun to sail on these ships, but they are a flat bottom, so they're a little bit more,
We do bounce around a little bit more when we get the big waves, so
Right.
we do try to stay as much as possible in the shelter of Vancouver Island, but we've also already, just last month, we went up to Ketchikan, Alaska. We go to the West Coast firing area every other month, it seems, and we're getting the full force of the Pacific Ocean at that time. So that can always be interesting.
Right, that'd be sporty for sure. So one of the unique things about this ship, or this class of ship, and we're going to have a tour here coming up in a second, but is the sweep deck. And perhaps you might want to point that out to me looking at one of your sister ships here.
Yeah, so here at Yankee Jetty, we have 6 MCDVs. Currently we're standing on HMCS Saskatoon, and just forward of us we have the White Horse outboard and the Brandon directly forward of us. So just down the 2 low areas down here that you see, that's what we refer to as the sweep deck. It's a extremely versatile space. Typically, now neither of these ships have it right now, but you would typically see some sort of sea container, which we refer to as a pod, that can serve various different purposes.
Well, so it makes these ships really, really versatile because it kind of gives a modular aspect. So you've got all this space that you could work with.
Yeah. The other thing that neither of these ships have, but we'll point out on our sweep deck, is an accommodations pod. So we can bring on, again, an additional sea container to have room for an additional 6 sailors to have a bunk and a desk to work and sleep in. So yeah, we'll get to see one of those later on today in the tour.
Awesome. And what is it like to actually live aboard one of these ships? You mentioned that you came from a Halifax-class frigate. These are smaller ships, but kind of curious to know your thoughts about actually living aboard one of these ships.
I would say that these ships, the living conditions are a little bit better than on the Halifax class. Typically, the cabins on board here only have up to 4 people in them, whereas on the frigates, there are some spaces where you're sharing a communal space with up to 20 other people. Same with bathrooms. On board here, everybody gets their own sink and mirror to shave and things in the morning. Whereas on a frigate, it's a lot of people using a communal space. So it is really nice on these ships. Yeah.
So now let's head over to your ship, which is the one right behind us.
Yes, this is HMCS Yellowknife,
right
directly
on.
behind me.
Yeah.
So we'll make our way over there. You'll notice that as I cross the bow, I have to salute to pay respects to the commissioned ship.
Awesome.
We'll make our way on over.
And that happens anytime you
Embark or disembark the ship,
right?
If it's in service, yes.
Right. Awesome. I'll follow you.
Okay, welcome aboard HMCS Yellowknife. As we go throughout the tour, you're going to see a lot of spaces that are a little bit torn apart. There's extra piping and ventilation that you'll see throughout the ship. It's because we're in a work period. So we're getting various maintenance jobs done on board the ship right now. And as a part of that, things aren't all totally put together as they would be when we go to sea next week when we go back to sea.
And for people that are watching this video, they might comment on the fact that, you know, the deck here, appears to be rust and what have you. I think it's important to note that that's not unusual, because these ships go out to sea and it's really harsh conditions in salt water. So this is kind of normal.
Yeah, we're in a maritime environment. Metal is only gonna rust when it's exposed to salt water in particular. So yeah, we do have, as you can see, a number of rusts, but our ships do go through a maintenance cycle on a 5-year cycle. So this ship, likely mid next year, is going to go under a major refit where they'll refinish all the decks, and it'll be looking in tip-top shape, hopefully.
Yeah, no, right on. So let's start right at the front of the bow, and then we'll kind of work our way back, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
So this space is what we call the forecastle, or the forecastle of the ship. So up here we have we have 2 of our different lines for securing when we come alongside. We're currently in a nested formation here at Wide Jetty. So we're actually outboard another ship and not tied directly to the jetty. Up here behind me we have our 2 anchors, as well as the motors that's going to raise and lower each of the cables. And then down below we have our chain locker, which is where our cables are stored.
And that's important. So if you go out, you need to anchor offshore somewhere, or just in terms of emergency, if you need to drop the anchor.
If we need to drop the anchor, we could do that with either of these 2 motors. We have 2 for redundancy purposes.
Right.
But yeah, we would, if we're going to be anchoring overnight somewhere, then we'd let go one of the anchors. Typically, it's the deck department that's going to be operating those. The deck department deals with all the kind of seamanship evolutions, where we'd be doing things on the upper deck. So the deck department, they deal with our anchors, all of the lines, painting and things like that.
Awesome. Let's continue on back.
Okay. So as you can see above me, this is our bridge. And then above that is our mast. We have a whole bunch of different emitters for communication purposes up there. So we have HF, VHF, UHF communication systems. We also have a couple different satellite communication systems, so that we're always in contact with other units or also with bases back ashore. You can also see that we're flying flag Romeo right now. That's because we're the ready-duty ship. The ready-duty ship means that if there was some sort of emergency or last-minute tasking that came up, our ship is the one that's designated to be the first ones to go out. Okay. So we have to be able to recall the ship's company, get everything on board that we need, food and water, to go out to sea within 8 hours. So it's a pretty quick turnaround if something were to happen.
Right.
So at any given time, one of the ships, whether it's a Kingston-class or a frigate on the base here, is designated as a ready-duty ship, and this week it just happens to be us.
Okay. Okay. Wow.
Do you want to go through?
Sure. I'll
Okay.
let you lead, whichever
All
way
right.
you think is best.
So we're going down the starboard side of the ship right now.
And as you said, you're in a nested formation, and
We're in a nested formation. So right behind me right now, we have HMCS Saskatoon, one of our sister ships.
Right.
Hey guys. All right, so we're now back here on the after forecastle, and behind me we have our boat deck. The boat deck is where we have our rib, which is the rigid hull inflatable boat that you see behind me here. We have two small boats on board. We have the rib and the Zodiac, which is down on the sweep deck. So they're really just small multi-purpose boats that if we need to deploy a team ahead of us or to go ashore for any reason, that we can do that. Again, it's the deck department that's typically going to operate these boats.
Right. Right. And so this deck that we're on right now, what is this level called here?
So we call this the after forecastle.
Okay.
And we'd also call it the weather decks because it's above the water line.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Okay, we'll make our way down to the sweep deck.
Awesome.
Okay, so we're here on the sweep deck now. As you can see, it is also a little bit torn apart. We're having some remediation done to the non-skid decking just back aft. That's what that worker's working on. As I mentioned from above, this is our Zodiac, so it's our second boat that we have on board.
And you would use these boats for search and rescue? Or...
Search and rescue, or if we had a person fall overboard, we would deploy the boat.
Right.
If we're coming alongside somewhere and we need line handlers to receive the ship as it comes alongside when we throw our lines ashore, we would have this launched with a couple personnel in it to support that.
Okay.
Right here we have our capstan. So when we do come alongside and we need to put tension on our lines in order to get nice and tight with the jetty, we'd use the capstan to pull ourselves in nice and tight.
And these ships, the maritime coastal defense vessels, they are warships. And so perhaps some people might wonder about weapons. There used to be a crew-served weapon on the forecastle where we just were, which is the front of the ship. Those were removed a number of years ago.
Yes.
So what are we left with now on board these ships?
Yeah, so that used to be a 40 millimeter weapon. What we have now are essentially two 50 cal guns. They're mounted on either side of the bridge wings that we can check out later, as well as small arms. So we have C8s, C9s, C7s, as well as Sig Sauer pistols, is what we would use in addition to the 50 cals.
Yeah, and again, the fact that the Kingston-class allows modular payloads, and which makes you a multi-role ship. You can do many different things like boarding party operations. So you don't need massive guns.
No,
Right.
no. That's not really our purpose for this particular ship.
Right, right. And so speaking of the multi-mission aspect, here we are on the sweep deck, and you were going to kind of point out roughly where like some of those ISO containers would fit on board
Right.
at this area.
So what we call the pods, just back where these gentlemen are working right now, is typically where it would be mounted.
Okay.
Basically right here going aft. And it just gets craned on and off depending on what our mission is.
Okay.
The other pod that we have on board is the accommodations pod. So that's what you see just behind me here. So the accommodations pod can accommodate an additional 8 personnel in order to get us up to our full crew complement of 47 people.
Okay.
This is the escape hatch side. They enter it from the forward end.
Right, and so that is right up. So do you have to come out of the ship to go into?
You come out of the ship just for a few feet in order to get into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Obviously, there's decks below to where primarily people live.
Yes.
Right?
There's 39 bunks below,
Okay.
as well as some up above. But this is the only one that is above the weather deck.
Right. Gotcha. Well, let's go on into the ship now and get a sense of the inside of HMCS Yellowknife.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you.
So we mentioned it earlier, but this is the entrance to the pod for those additional 8 personnel. So you guys are now going to come within the superstructure of the ship, and we're going to start by going into the MCR and meet our chief engineer. So come on in.
Awesome.
Today I'm Petty Officer Jacob Martin, the Chief Engineer of HMCS Yellowknife. Here we are in the Machinery Control Room, or MCR for short. We have a variety of lights and dials here. For the most part, we've got our CAMs, or Central Alarm Monitoring System. These are the 2 screens you can see here. We have a variety of alarms that'll come in all throughout the ship. We can send a rounds person to go and investigate it. To the right of that is the fans and pump control. We've got a variety of fans throughout the ship. We can start and stop here, as well as some pumps. And even further to the right is our IFDMS, or Integrated Fire Damage and Monitoring System. In the event of a fire or a flood, we'll get an alarm here, and we'll go and investigate it and find out whether or not we need to go to emergency stations, or if we can just take care of it our own selves with rapid response. Over here we've got our motor control. We've got 2 motors that drive the ship, which have a Z drive, and is a gearing reduction system to the propeller, and make sure that those stay on when we're sailing. If those trip, we'll have to go into our emergency procedures and mitigate that and talk to the officer to watch. Over here we've got a mimic of our power generation and distribution system. It's a mock of where the electricity is going from where our diesel alternators produce it. From there, we generate 600 volts, which powers our motors. It also generates electricity from the motor alternator, which acts like a transformer, and it just reduces the voltage. And that provides power to all of our hotel services, like our TVs and our ovens and our toasters.
So really, this space kind of runs the whole ship in a way.
Pretty much.
If,
Yes.
if things aren't working right here, the ship isn't doing much.
Yep. So if we get an alarm on cams, or if just something were to trip and fail, we're usually the first ones to find out about it, and then we go do our investigation and try and rectify the problem.
Awesome, awesome. So really important. And is this this panel here? Is that a redundant panel for the Z drive motors?
Yes, we have multiple redundancies throughout the ship.
Okay.
Most of the time, we have our helm console up on the bridge, crewed by a person, one of the bosuns, and they're the ones, because they've got the windows up there and they can see where they're going, they can drive the ship. In the event that they have a failure in the helm's console, we can just take control from down here, or also down below in our switchboard room. We can take either propulsion or steering, or a combination of both, and we can run the show down here if we need to, for a little bit of period of time until we figure it out, and then we give it back.
Right on. Awesome. Thank you so much for showing us a little bit of your space.
Yeah, no worries.
Appreciate it.
Okay, we're now going to go make our way to the galley and grab some soup.
Awesome.
The soup is a tradition in the Navy that every day at 10 o'clock, when we're alongside or at sea, we get to have soup. So it's essentially our coffee break, but you also get the bonus of getting some awesome soup.
I love
So
it.
we'll go check out the galley. All right, so we have 3 of our awesome cooks here. This is our galley. And what are we going to be eating today, guys?
So today we have a nice butter chicken going on for our main course. Our secondary was a nice marinated tofu done up by our chief cook. Our starch is going to be a nice basmati rice, and the veg is a nice roasted zucchini.
Awesome. And we also have some 10 o'clock soup today?
Oh yes, wonton soup. for
Wonton soup.
Wonton Wednesday. We made that tradition a couple of years ago down here.
Okay, cool.
Right on. And does each ship do it differently, or?
So yes, we all do it a bit differently. Yeah, we all do it a bit differently, but when we sail, we follow a set menu done by Ottawa. But we like doing it a bit differently, just so there's a little spice of life down here.
Yeah, right on. So that gives each ship kind of its own little, I guess, charm.
Yeah,
Right?
a little bit of an identity.
Yeah, yeah. Is there a specialty that you guys have here on HMCS Yellowknife?
I don't know. What do you guys think? You guys got a specialty?
I really like making chicken and rice soup.
Well, there
Chicken
you
and
go.
rice soup?
Yeah, they definitely like their soups here on this ship. That's why we made a lot of wonton today.
Awesome. Well, let's give that a try, and then we'll have a little bit of a tour of your space.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you.
You guys can come and help yourselves with it.
Cool.
Or if the server wants to serve it.
Yeah, I can serve it. You guys all want a bowl? All right. If you guys want to add some green onion, go for it. And then we'll just make our way over to the chief and POs again to enjoy it.
Welcome to the galley. We generally
Thanks,
feed about 35 people here.
Awesome.
How'd you enjoy the soup?
I love the soup. 10 o'clock Navy soup is my favorite tradition that the Navy has.
It's such a good tradition, and I'm so glad it's one of the traditions we're keeping on down here for sure.
It's like, I mean, I'll admit I tried a time coming on board the ships just so I can get soup. So it was lovely. The wonton soup was great today.
I'm glad you enjoyed.
Thank
Well,
you.
Give you a little tour of our workspace here.
Yeah,
We got a
please.
nice little steam line, which right now we're getting prepared for a 11:30 lunchtime.
Okay.
We have a nice butter chicken that's already been made up this morning.
Nice.
We got nice basmati rice, and then we'll probably be putting our tofu and our vegetables. So generally, we'll go for lunch with one hot protein, a vegetarian protein, and then we'll have a sandwich bar just in case somebody wants a lighter lunch.
And so that's kind of cool. So how do you guys decide what's on the menu? And in terms of like serving, do you guys now, in terms of food safe, you serve the crew, or how does it work?
For food safe, we'll serve the crew because only the cooks have food safe on board.
Okay.
But for soup, we'll allow them just because there's not much of a hazard for cross-contamination. That's our biggest concern.
Sure.
But yeah, for selecting menus, we usually do, the chief cook and I will sit down at the start of the week and we'll just go through like, hey, we'll do chicken on this day, beef, pork. We'll make a nice rotation and then we'll just move forward from there.
Right. And as you mentioned, you give variety to people, so you're accommodating different types of,
Yep.
I guess, dietary requirements.
Yeah, on board we have one Muslim, we have a pescatarian and a vegan,
Okay.
and we accommodate all of those.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. So it's not like somebody's forced into like, hey, this is all you got. But and I guess there is within some reason, right? Like, I mean,
There's some harder ones, like we've had some lactose people come on board. We'll try our best to accommodate them.
sure.
But usually they'll just be like, hey, could I just get this without the bread?
Right.
And we'll always do it.
Right. Okay, cool. Well, yeah. If you don't mind, Graham, show me a little bit more of kind of your
Yeah,
space.
sure.
here.
So we recently just got this a couple years ago, a Rationale oven. It's a great piece of equipment with a steamer setting, a steam heat setting, and just a direct heat setting.
Okay.
It also has a bunch of built-in prefab settings as well. Really good. We have a little stovetop here, where we do all of our soups and sauces.
Okay.
And then just general work counter space with drawers. And then we have our little convection oven down there.
And so, how much are you producing in a day? Like,
So alongside, we produce for generally 30 to 40 people. But while we're sailing, it's 3 meals a day, about 35 people for each meal.
right. And do you do like, what if people in between meals want to have something? Like, are you guys tasked with having?
So generally, we'll do like, for myself, when I sail, I'll always put out snacks. We always have like apples and oranges set outside, bananas. We have yogurt in the fridge that they're always able to help themselves to. The messes have bread and cereals throughout the day.
Okay.
So there's always something to eat, even if you miss meal timings.
Right on. And you might want to show me a little bit about what's on the counter now. What are we
Yep.
making there?
So right now, my junior here is prepping meals for tonight's crew because we are the next ship, so we have 2 people staying overnight to just supervise the ships in case of an emergency.
Right.
So he's making them 2 hamburgers and some fried cauliflower.
Okay.
Pennington, what kind of seasonings do you put on the cauliflower?
So far, I've just put some. It's on the cabinet.
Is that paprika? Or
No, it's roasted
Roasted red pepper?
red pepper and garlic. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, a nice little prefab season of roasted red pepper. It's definitely one of, I find, the Navy's favorite spice to use, and generally everybody likes it.
right on. And so the reason why it's just a couple of meals for the evening is this is the ready duty ship, but
Yep.
so there has to be a few people aboard, but otherwise the ship's company goes home.
Yeah, we all have our own apartments. Some of us are up at Nellie's block. But yeah, most of us go home every night. We're on a 2-hour recall though.
Okay.
So they'll give us a call and we have 2 hours to get to the ship if needed.
Right. Okay. And that's just calling you up on the cell phone
Yep,
or whatever.
they
it is.
have all of our cell numbers and they have an emergency text service that they legit hit one button, we get a text and we know we gotta grab our go bags and get to ship.
And get to ship. Right on. Well, that's cool. And so how do you find working in this? Like, it's a relative, I'm just going to pan back here. It's a relatively confined space, but is it, I guess it's adequate for what you need to do, right?
Yeah, for the 35-ish people we serve every day, this is definitely adequate amount of space. It can get pretty jam-packed in here when you have 3 cooks working at the same time.
Sure.
But between 1 to 2 cooks, it's a great amount of space.
That's awesome. Well, Graham, thank you so much for showing me around the galley of HMCS Yellowknife. This is
No
awesome.
problem at all.
And thank you again for the soup. It was great.
No worries. If you want to stay for lunch, we'll have plenty of food too.
Beautiful. I think I might take you up on that. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, we're gonna leave the galley and go check out what my cabin looks like for living accommodations.
Awesome.
So there's 16 cabins on board, ranging from the CO's cabin, which typically only has 1 person in it, up to most of the cabins have 4 people in them. So I'm in a 4-person cabin, and I'll show you what it looks like.
And in terms of like just social spaces on board the ship, clearly you can hang out in your cabin, but what other spaces are there on the ship?
Yeah, so We also have the wardroom, which is a communal space for the officers. We have the Chief and PO's lounge, which is for the chiefs and petty officers on board. And then for master sailors and below, they have the junior ranks mess.
Okay.
So yeah, 3 different spots. Each of them will have a little bit of a bar. They'll have a TV and then typically like a gaming system so they can kind of hang out, play some games and have a good time.
Right.
It's also where we would eat all of our meals.
Right.
So we'd grab our meals from the galley and then go to one of those 3 spots based on your rank to eat.
Okay. And when you say bar, there's no alcohol on board the ships anymore, but so these are just kind of areas where you can get, I guess, refreshments or what have you.
So we do still have bars on board, and we do have alcohol on board.
Okay.
But we're not allowed to consume it while at sea.
Oh, I see.
So when the ship comes alongside and we're all tied up and there's no more sailing, then you can go and grab a beer. But when we're at sea doing operational things, the Navy is now a dry Navy and we're not allowed to drink at sea.
Right. And I guess also if you're going to grab a beer or something like that, you are not working at that time. That is your private or
it's your time off.
Your time off.
Off
right.
duty, yeah.
Good distinction. Awesome.
Okay, so we'll go into quickly pop into cabin 9, which is my cabin.
Cool.
So this is cabin 9. So we have 4 bunks, 1, 2, 3, and 4. When I'm not sleeping in it, it looks like this. And then when I'm sleeping in it, I pull this down and my bed kind of quickly pops out. And then we each also get our own locker. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4 lockers in here. We have a workspace, and then we share a sink and a mirror. And that's kind of the standard layout for all the cabins that we have on board.
And how often, or aside from sleeping, to what degree of time do you spend in here?
Not too much, honestly. I have a workstation elsewhere, but if I wasn't sleeping, the next thing I might be doing is using the computer, but typically I personally don't spend too much time in my cabin. I'd say that's a general trend for most of the people on board. They're either in their wardroom or like their leisure space, or they're at their workstation.
Right.
That's pretty standard.
Right. And sleeping conditions, these are similar to other ships like the Halifax.
Similar to other ships. Some of the Halifax spots, they'll have bunks stacked 3 high. These are only 2 high, which is kind of nice.
Cool.
We do have 3-person bunks though on board here.
Okay.
But not as many as the frigates do.
Right. Cool. Well, thank you for sharing your personal space with me.
Okay, so we're gonna head on up to the bridge on our way. We're going quickly by, this is the ship's office. It's where our coxswain works out of. He's the head non-commissioned member on board. Earlier I mentioned the wardroom. That's where the officers can go and hang out. If you want to quickly take a peek at what it looks like. So yeah, we'll eat at the table, we can hang out and have a good time in here. We have some gaming systems as well. Yeah, so this is
nice little social area.
Yeah, not a bad spot. If you need a coffee, you can grab one here. Tea.
Microwave.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah,
Awesome.
let's continue on up to the bridge. Okay, so we call this area the CO's flats, just because the commanding officer's cabin is in this area.
Okay.
Back aft here, we have the communications control room. That's where we have all of our servers and everything, so that we can have computers and as well as a lot of our communication equipment. In here, we have our fan room, and if we go forward, again, earlier I mentioned that we're in a work period, so they're redoing some of the tiling in this wash place.
Okay.
Forward here we have the CO's cabin and the XO's cabin, and above us is the bridge.
Cool. Great, thank you.
All right. So we're at the aft end of the bridge right now. It also doubles as our workout area. So we got treadmill, kind of a multi-station weight machine. Behind you there's a dumbbell rack. We'll also typically have 1 to 2 stationary bikes that will have kind of spread out on the bridge. Although when it's nice weather, we like to have them out on the bridge wings, and then you get a bike outside in the sun, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Yeah.
So trying to make use of every bit of space that you've
Yeah,
got, right?
you definitely have to, because there's very limited space on board. So if we can stick a treadmill somewhere, we're going to try to stick a treadmill somewhere.
Yeah, right on.
Keeping people active is really important, especially if you're going to go to sea for a month at a time. You don't just want to vegetate, you want to stay active, maintain, or improve your fitness.
Yeah, totally.
We're in the military after all, so it's a really important pillar of the institution.
Absolutely, and one of the things that I've distinctly remember from being aboard these ships is you're always using your muscles. You're always using your core because the ship's always moving. It's
Yeah.
I find it quite fatiguing, but I guess you get used to it.
Yeah, it definitely is tiring, always having to compensate for the rocking of the ship.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. And what are we looking at here to?
So here we have some of our force protection equipment. So we are a very important naval asset for Canada. If someone were to target us, we want to be able to defend ourselves. So we do store a number of our weapons in this cabinet. And then here we have protective vests. There's also some helmets. And then our ammunition is stored separately from here.
Right. Interesting. So hey, we are now joined by Lieutenant Benjamin Miller. And Benjamin, you are the navigating officer on board HMCS Yellowknife.
That's correct. I'm responsible for the development of tracks and making sure the ship gets where it's going and gets there on time.
Awesome. Yeah, important job. So you primarily do that from here on the bridge.
That's correct. We're up on the bridge here on an MCDV, HMCS Yellowknife. You'll notice it's a bit of a smaller bridge than you might be familiar with from other platforms, but it's got everything we need to get the job done.
Awesome. So as we came up into this space, we saw the workout equipment, which is right behind you, but the actual I guess the business part of the bridge is forward. So
that's correct. Unfortunately, we don't get a lot of time to work out on watch. Usually a little too busy. So if you'd like to come with me, I'll give you a tour of the bridge.
Absolutely. Cheers. Thank you.
We're actually having a navigation safety inspection today. So conveniently, you can see our suite of old school navigation equipment. We are still trained on the taking of bearings at sea with a sextant used for celestial fixing. And we have equipment here that we can use if any of our electronic equipment were to go down. For example, we can measure distance at sea, calculate ranges and bearings, all those good kind of things.
And how, I guess, like you said, you know, this is equipment for redundancy in case
That's right.
your normal equipment breaks down. How often are you training with this stuff?
Fairly often. It's a specialized skill set, so generally we'll only do it when we're talking to junior naval warfare officers or when we're trying to train navigators. This is the kind of thing that we'll do a lecture every couple of months. We'll try and get the equipment out as often as possible and stay familiar on it. But as you say, it's mostly for redundancy, so it's not a daily thing.
Right. Awesome.
Although if we are doing an open ocean transit, we'll take a celestial fix every night just to make sure that we know where we are.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, some of those tried and true methods, right?
Sometimes the old ways work the best.
Exactly.
So if you'll join me up forward here, this is our bridge. Feel free to take a look around. Again, forgive the appearance. We have everything out for our navigation safety inspectors coming later this afternoon. Right over here you'll see the helm console. This is the console from which the helm person physically drives the ship. So the ops the watch will give ordered helm commands. On an MCDV, we actually have 2 Z-drive azimuth pods in lieu of a more traditional rudder and propeller setup. The so what is that we have 2 pods that can rotate 360 degrees in any direction, giving us pretty impressive maneuverability. It's usually the petty ops the watch, one of our senior enlisted members, who will close up on the helm.
And so for people that are thinking of a normal boat or a ship, you have propellers at the back.
That's right.
And sometimes they're fixed pitch, sometimes they're variable pitch propellers.
That's right.
This doesn't have that.
No, we have fixed pitch propellers. In lieu of the variable pitch to go ahead and astern, we can still apply forward and astern propulsion, so the propeller will spin the other way, but we can also turn the propellers 180 degrees or any variation thereupon to get the ship's head where we need it to go.
Right, and that's why these controllers right in front of you can actually turn.
Yeah, that's right. These are combined helm and throttle levers, so the helmsperson can apply throttle or azimuth on either of the pods from the same control.
Awesome. And so before you come to a ship like this, you would be operating or you would be training on a Orca class, which was the episode prior to this one. So this is a different means of propulsion. So how long does it take to get up to speed to learn how to operate this ship?
Well, the more time you have, the better for sure. But at the very least, it would take a couple of weeks. The main differences are, like, an Orca is obviously very much smaller than an MCDV,
Right.
and operates with 2 rudders and 2 propellers.
Right.
So the characteristics of ship handling are very different on this class. There are things we can do that the Orcas aren't capable of. That is to say, we are a little more maneuverable. The ship was originally designed for mine sweeping, so that's where that comes from. But for example, the Orcas are a little quicker in a drag race than the MCDVs are as well. Because we use hybrid diesel-electric propulsion train, we're a little slower picking up speed, so the Orcas will beat us in a drag race, but we're more maneuverable.
Awesome. Awesome. Super cool. Fantastic. So that's this station. This is helm.
If we carry on to the starboard side of the bridge here, you'll notice the Polaris, which is very similar to what you would have seen on the Orca-class vessel. This is where the officer of the watch or the navigating officer usually stands, taking ranges and bearings.
And so this is actually really your station.
That's right. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially if we have good visibility, this is where the officer of the watch or the navigator will sort of call the shots for the bridge team.
And describe this piece of equipment, because I've seen people use it on frigates, on these MCDVs, but I don't really understand it.
Well, so if you think about navigating on land, you'll always have a compass, right? The compass tells you the bearing of things that you need to find and helps you triangulate your position. You can't use a traditional magnetic compass on board a warship, obviously because of all the metal. So what we have instead is a gyro-stabilized compass. So down below we have gyroscopes, which will provide consistent reports on the ship's head and bearing. And from there, the repeat comes up to the Polaris, so the officer of the watch or the navigating officer can take bearings to determine which way something is moving through space. It's often very difficult while you're moving, while they're moving, to get an assessment of what direction they're moving in a true sense. And one of the only ways to do that is a consistent bearing change. So that is what this station provides for the officer of the watch or the navigator.
Okay.
They'll combine that with, you can see our helm and Doppler log repeats. So we can calculate speed through the water and the ship's head in combination with bearings achieved from the Polaris and other information from the other stations. That's how we avoid contacts and conduct our navigation.
Right, right. Okay, very cool. And you do this in conjunction, obviously, with sensors that are on board.
Yes, that's right. Probably the most traditional sensor that you'll find on board any maritime vessel is a radar terminal. We have 2 radar terminals on board operating in the X and S bands. They're pretty typical to what you'll see on other classes of vessel or on civilian vessels. The so what is that you can get a picture regardless of visibility, get radar paint on that, and these actually have automatic radar plotting aids, which means that we can generate a lot of information, the math we need to do our job automatically from the radar console.
Nice, nice. And then the console to the right of that.
Yeah, so this is, again, you'll see something similar on board any other class of vessel or on board a civilian vessel. This is our chart plotting software. So obviously, gone are the days where everything was plotted on paper charts. We've replaced that instead with electronic nautical charts, which we'll all host centrally on our, we call it a SHINADS system. The other thing that this does is compiles all of our nav data and information for us. So things like our Doppler speed log, our gyros, our weather information, our ship's head will all be fed into this system so that we can get an amalgamated picture of where we are in the world and where we're going. This is also linked in, for example, the Automatic Identification System, or AIS, which some ships are required to carry and some ships may choose to carry. All told, it's the best way we have to compile a picture of the outside environment.
Right, right. Interesting. Okay. And then I guess the next big part of this bridge is comms, right?
That's right,
You
yes.
need to be able to communicate.
Yeah, comms are pretty critical. So obviously the Obstacle Watch has access to VHF radio at all times. We'll always monitor channel 16 for international calling in distress, as well as, say, a local channel to call into traffic. If you'll turn around, you can see other comms equipments on the bridge. We're using much of it right now, but we have a NavCom station where if we have consorts we have to talk to or anything particularly challenging that needs to go out on the means, we'll close up Enable Communicator there. And you can also see we keep a full host of PRCs, radios, things, so that we can maintain comms throughout the ship.
Right on. So now that we've had this tour of the bridge of the Kingston-class, the Maritime Coastal Defense vessels, tell me what you enjoy most about being aboard this class of ship.
So the thing about this class of ship is it's capable of some ship handling maneuvers that are really pretty impressive. Speed is not the key to driving an MCDV, but given that you have 360 degrees of control over your thrusters, you can effect some pretty impressive turns. So for example, you can turn at rest very well. You can conduct an approach either for towing or for coming alongside that's at a steeper angle than you might otherwise. And generally speaking, these ships do what you tell them to do very quickly. They're very responsive. So they're a lot of fun to drive, a lot of fun to con, and they're pretty capable.
Yeah, right on. And the commanding officer a little while ago mentioned that these ships on the East Coast go pretty far afield.
They do. They'll
Into
do.
Europe, into Africa. On the West Coast, perhaps not as much because the Pacific Ocean is so large. But what are some of the particular operations that you like doing?
Well, on this class of vessel, on the West Coast, the named operation that we'll participate most often in is Op Carib, generally sailing southward to do some drug interdiction. But we'll also go quite a good ways north. For example, we were just in Ketchikan, Alaska a little while ago. And so most of our operations are operations with our consorts from other navies or from our Navy. So for example, we operated on our last TGX with a French frigate. We'll be operating on our upcoming exercise with other Canadian frigates or our AOPSs. And so operating in consort with other vessels is the best type of operation that we usually do.
Awesome. Benjamin, thank you so much for taking your time to give us a tour of the bridge.
You're very welcome. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you. Thank you.